Muted.
As they begin to log in our disclosure website. The House passed a number of new rules addressing lobbyist conduct and behavior, but the two we're here to talk to you about today are the new disclosure requirements, and I like to refer to them as issue disclosure and contract disclosure. The one every registered lobbyist needs to be focused on is the issue disclosure requirement. It's House Rule 17.1H, and the requirement is simply that a lobbyist may not lobby on any issue unless they have disclosed the issue in advance through our lobbyist disclosure website. So Jason has helped design that website. He's been walking people through the process the last 3 weeks as they begin to file their disclosures. We've got well over 400 lobbyists have already logged in to disclose some of the issues for some of their clients, and so we're real excited about that progress. We do have two-hour training sessions next week at the House of Representatives from 4:30 to 6:30. They're going to be identical sessions in room 404 House Office Building to cover these rules in detail, and also to cover the new member project appropriation requirement. The appropriation staff will be participating in that training. And that will be live streamed on the Florida Channel website, and probably will be live streamed on the House website. So you don't have to come to Tallahassee or your House Office Building to participate in that. We will probably set up for questions to be submitted there by email. Please note our help email address is lobbyistdisclosure@myfloridahouse.gov. Jason answers all that mail, and we're giving people a lot of help with that website. The issue disclosure must be made before you discuss a matter with a particular matter with any member or House staff, and it has to be made with sufficient specificity. People are doing it right now, and we're not frustrated with anybody. We're just excited that they're getting on and making their disclosures. But you'll see a number of really high quality, specific disclosures of issues people are working on. When you know you're getting ready to ask a member to file a bill, how can you characterize that bill in a few words? Disclose the issue on the website, identify the client, submit the disclosure, and then call the member and ask them to file the bill. If you can't articulate what it is you're asking to be filed, it's probably too early to be calling the member. But just think in terms of what's the substance of the bill, what are going to be the substantive words in the bill title, not the relating to clause, but the bill title. We're changing the requirements for filing for a permit. You know, just put that in your issue. The subject matter of the permits, and you're good to go. There's a lot of rumors, misconceptions. This disclosure does not have to be made before every meeting. It's an issue-by-issue disclosure. You can't lobby anybody until you disclose the issue, anybody on the House side. Once you've disclosed, you got a year of free action there, so have fun and do it. We're seeing this month as primarily people learning to use the system. We'll be getting back with people starting probably later next week, and suggesting that some of their general disclosures we may want to go ahead and delete. You cannot edit submissions. We can edit errors. There's no reason to not to undisclose anything. Once you disclose it, you're going to lobby. That's basically a public record, and it's going to stay on our website unless there's some egregious error. You clicked the wrong client or something. You can contact Jason at that lobbyist disclosure email address, and we can certainly remove an erroneous disclosure. Jason's going to walk you through the form a little bit. and I know you're going to have some questions. A lot of the questions we're getting at the Capitol are determined by the answer to what is a lobbyist or what is lobbying. We're assuming we're talking to registered lobbyists today, so we know that you are already registered lobbyists, so there's no question of whether you're a lobbyist for purposes of the rule. Some of you do pro bono work, or you lobby on your own in your own name for issues you care about in addition to working for your clients. Those things that you are not doing as paid work for clients are not covered under the definition of lobbying, and you don't have to disclose those issues. So I know a lot of you are engaged in issues that you're not being compensated for. That's just like any other constituent exercising their First Amendment rights to talk to the legislature. It's the paid lobbying that has to be disclosed issue by issue. That doesn't mean that, oh, you can be paid for all your legal advice, but your lobbying is pro bono. That's not really, we're not looking for loopholes. We just want people to understand that that pro bono work that you may do for your church or your diocese or your Rotary Club or somebody else, because you know your way around the Capitol, that's not lobbying under the definition in Rule 1.1, and you don't have to disclose the issues. The other disclosure, the contract disclosure, relates to public entities. The speaker thinks it's important that people know how their tax dollars are being spent, especially when they're being spent on lobbyists. And so House Rule 17.1I requires certain lobbying contracts to be disclosed, and the timing is when you register. So a number of folks have already filed some contracts, but when you re-register after January 1 for the 2017 year, at that time you will need to provide a copy of those contracts to the lobbyist disclosure email address. We're going to post those on the internet. Those are all public entities. It also includes certain direct support organizations and foundations if they're created by law or ordinance to pursue a public purpose, or if they're entitled by law or ordinance to any distribution of tax or fee revenue, or organized for the sole purpose directly. There are a number of, I think, local entities that receive maybe tourist taxes or other local revenues. They have by ordinance, they receive the revenue. Those entities would have to file. This does not include people who receive simply based on a receipt of appropriation, but only those who by law or ordinance receive a direct distribution of tax or fee revenue. That would include the licensed tax organizations that get a direct distribution of license tax fees, other similar groups. So we can work with you case by case. We've got FAQs on the website that provide answers to a lot of your general questions. I hope you've read those. If you haven't, I hope you read them before next week. And we do invite you to participate in our training next week, either in person or online. I'd like to pause if there's any questions right now about what we've covered.
Yeah. Let's see. We have a couple of questions, but not really about what Don was talking about specifically. They're kind of more. Well, here's one from Barney Bishop. Would an economic development commission of a county be considered a public entity, I'm assuming, for the contract disclosure portion?
On the legal question of a public entity, I would assume that if it's created by law or ordinance, that it's a public entity. Under the other group, the question would be, are they formed exclusively to, if they're technically a private foundation of some kind, if they're formed for the sole purpose of supporting a public entity, such as a county, I would think they would be. Or if they do, by ordinance, receive a direct distribution of one of the local tax streams, they would be covered on the contract disclosure.
If anyone else has any questions about what Dawn just talked about, you can put them into the chat. We have some more general kind of help questions that we'll get to in a moment. Do you want me to kind of?
Yeah, I'd like Jason to kind of walk through using the form online. If you've tried to use it and had any troubles, please be submitting your questions. I'm having trouble making eye contact with the camera. When my grandkids are on Skype, I have no problem looking directly at the screen, but the only one talking on this screen is me, and I don't really have a good time looking at myself talking. So forgive my lack of eye contact. Jason's a little more adept at the technology.
That's okay. I'll just talk briefly. We do have an FAQ on the form page itself that'll answer some of the general questions, and I've been compiling some other troubleshooting questions that I'm going to eventually update with that FAQ, particularly after we get a lot more questions at the training next week. But one of the common questions we're getting is, how do I log in once I go to the Lobbyist Disclosure and Information page? And the answer is that you log in with your username and password you received from the Office of Lobbyist Registration when you registered to be a lobbyist. It's important to note that you get 2 usernames from them. It is your individual username and password you log in. It's the same one on our site. Once you log in from there, you should see your name and if you work for a firm and your principals that you are associated with. They'll appear there automatically. You need to select the appropriate principals for whatever issues or bills you're disclosing on the form. Some other common issues that we've had as people have been learning how to use this new site. When you enter an issue in, you can enter one or multiple issues on a single form. You select an issue category, and then in the text box where you'll have 250 characters to more briefly describe your issue, after you do that, you can click the Add button. When you click the Add button, you're not adding it to the database itself. You're simply adding it to the form that you're using to submit information to the database. It's important to note that each form is not your record. That is simply a way of transmitting data to the database where your record is. And your record is really the cumulative submissions that you have made over the course of, right now it'll just be over the last couple of weeks, but throughout the year it'll be your total record. So at the end you'll be able to see the more general issues you've disclosed and how those filtered into more specific issues and proposals, and eventually into bills or amendments, and those will all be disclosed too. I think we had a question earlier. While we wait for bill numbers to come out, does it suffice to write in the issue topic? And the answer to that is yes, and that's actually what you should do. Because before bill numbers come out, if you're lobbying for a particular proposal or issue, meaning you're talking to members and staff about something that you're lobbying on, you need to disclose that issue before you ask them to file a bill or before a bill exists on that particular topic. So yes, you should do that. We have another question. What if a member asked about a topic or issue during the meeting that you didn't disclose on the website beforehand? Obviously, the rule states that you need to disclose beforehand, and in many cases you'll have already pre-disclosed a lot of the issues that you plan on lobbying on throughout. But if there is an unexpected topic that comes up where the member asks you what your position is on this particular issue that you haven't disclosed, or something of that nature, where something comes up that you didn't expect in a particular meeting, it's on you. It's on each individual lobbyist to disclose, but we're allowing people to, in that sort of situation, to disclose after the meeting. I think it would be appropriate too to let the member or staff know that when you're in the meeting that you haven't disclosed on that particular issue, and you will do so as soon as you can after the meeting. That is appropriate. In many cases, members and staff who are also getting used to this rule, and we've given them a FAQ as well, because they are having to help implement this rule by helping all of you comply. You will probably be asked prior to meetings if you're a lobbyist, and if you are, what issues you've disclosed on. And if you've disclosed on a specific issue that you want to meet about, you'll probably start to hear that more and more as kind of a standard practice in helping everyone comply. And that really is our goal here. I think, as Dawn mentioned, we're not here to
asking members to do is to be sensitive to the burden that they've placed on you to not lobby before you disclose the issue. So we're training staff to send an email, can you discuss this issue with us? There's no violation when you receive a question from us, and you don't have an obligation to lobby on our command. So when we send an email saying, can you discuss this issue, that's your opportunity to think, whether the client wants you working on this issue or when is appropriate for you, so you have an opportunity to do your disclosure and then get back in touch with staff. Obviously, members, they're not going to take orders from the speaker about how to communicate with you like the rest of staff have to, but we've asked members, and I think they were the ones in the training this week were serious enough about it to realize that they put a burden on you, and they owe you the courtesy of not being overly insistent to get information from you right now or right on January 7th when they've already voted for a rule that says that you can't even talk about it until you've disclosed the issue. So we're asking members to be sensitive to the burdens that they've placed on you, to be courteous, to be patient as everybody learns to walk through this process. We think once the bills hit the floor, hit the clerk's office and they're all filed, everybody starts seeing what issues they're working on, that a lot of things are going to be taken care of pretty easily. We will have issues come up. As you ask for amendments, you should be disclosing the issue before you ask. But when you see the amendment pop up, all you have to do is put the amendment number in there, or if you're already disclosed that you're lobbying the bill, you don't even have to add the amendment. But if you ask for the amendment, you need to disclose before you ask. Otherwise, you're lobbying an issue that you haven't disclosed. So if the amendment is the same issue, if it's just a technical tweak to the language that's already in the bill, there's no new issue. But when you're bringing a new section of law or a new related issue into a bill by asking for an amendment, you need to disclose that before you ask for the amendment, before you talk to the legislative assistant, before you talk to the committee staff, before you talk to the member. You need to disclose the issue. And hopefully we'll be able to read your issue and see your amendment and recognize that they match together. If not, we're not doing a good job, all of us. So we'll all work together and try to figure out how this works best. But the members have been instructed or taught. They're not always willing to do what they're taught, but they've been taught to be courteous toward you as you begin to negotiate this process.
So as we're answering some issue questions, it's important to note that when you're filling out the form to submit your information to the database, whatever issues you put in the form does not necessarily have to match the bills if you're disclosing a bill number. We made the form flexible because a lot of you represent clients in different ways, so we made it so you could select multiple clients if they're interested in the same issues or bills. Especially if there's a common issue or bills among all of those clients. Some of that does happen. You can also do one client at a time and do each individual issue for those clients, whatever is easiest for you. We made the form flexible for that. It is important to note, though, that whatever principals or clients that you have selected up above will become associated with whatever issues and whatever bills are on each individual form when you hit the submit button. Something that we're, as Don noted earlier, once you hit the submit button and it goes into the database, you cannot edit or delete any of those records. We're obviously being flexible with that right now as everyone's learning the system, but you should be mindful on what you're submitting to the system before it gets submitted. Now, as a part of our process of tweaking the site and making it better for you, I've heard from a number of you that you'd like some sort, after you hit submit, some sort of confirmation page to before it goes into the system, so you can check your submission to make sure that there aren't any errors ahead of time. And that's something I've been working with our IT department on, and that's something you might see in the next couple of weeks pop up on the site. So that's kind of an improvement that I got from feedback from all of you guys. But let me answer another question now. Okay, we have a question. Would employees of a company that come to Tallahassee for Capital Days for any type of trade association or anything like that, would they have to register as a lobbyist? The answer to that is that we, in this new disclosure rule, we did not change the definition of lobbying or lobbyist in Joint Rule 1 that I think Don talked about a little bit before. So if they were not registered or had to be a registered lobbyist before, they don't now, and the lobbyist disclosure rules do not apply to them. Anyone who comes up, any citizen that comes up and who is not a lobbyist, who's not paid to lobby on behalf of a client, is free to do all the same things that they were allowed to do before. They can come to Capitol Days, they can talk to members, they can lobby for issues that they care about personally, and they're not associated with this, only if you were a lobbyist. Let's see, we have another question here. The Florida Association of Counties or other organizations like that potentially cover more than 60% of all bills filed. We have 8 staff members. Do we have to disclose on all issues? Well, the answer to that is you only have to disclose on issues that you're actually going to be lobbying on. If you're going to be tracking or monitoring a wide range of issues in a wide general sense, you don't have to disclose all of that. The disclosure requirement is not a monitoring or tracking requirement. It's only those, so out of that large quantity of bills that you're tracking, you may only end up having a meeting with a member about any handful of them, maybe 1, maybe 10, maybe 20 of them. And it's those bills or those specific issues that you're actually going to be speaking in a committee, meeting with staff about, or meeting with individual members about. It's those issues that you need to disclose. How can an entry be updated rather than creating a whole new entry for the same client? As I mentioned before, as soon as you submit information to the system, you cannot edit or delete those records. The idea is that you disclose the specific issues and maybe slightly more broad specific issues, and over time you're submitting new disclosures for that client as the bill proposals get more and more specific and they turn into bills. So someone at the end of the legislative year could look you up or any lobbyist up, and they could be able to see everything that they've worked on and everything that they've disclosed during that legislative session. They kind of see how the work has progressed from general to specific and into bills or amendments as it moves forward. So each individual form is simply a way of submitting your information to the overall database or where your actual record exists. So there's no need to edit those things that you've already submitted or delete them. You're only going to be adding to your record as the legislative year moves on. Now, as Don mentioned, if you have any incorrect submissions, especially now, as we're all getting used to this new system and submitting new records, so if you've accidentally disclosed something for a client you shouldn't have, or something along those lines, if you send an email to lobbyistdisclosure@myfloridahouse.gov, I'll be happy to work with you to correct those mistakes. But there is no need to edit a disclosure for a client if you submitted something more broad and now you're submitting a more specific issue. You can do that with the form by submitting that more specific issue, and then you'll see your focus narrow over time. And that's the idea. That's how the system was designed. So there's no need to go back and edit those. Yeah, go ahead. Here's Don.
Yeah, a couple of things I want to add to that. First, Jason worked hard with the House IT to create the simplest input process we could create. And along with that simplicity, gave up the idea of any kind of flexibility of amendments and clarifications and revisions. So we're adding cumulative disclosures. But Jason is willing to take any concerns you have. If there's something you need deleted because it was false or inadequate or identified with the wrong client, don't hesitate to contact him. I'm just telling you, he's very busy right now helping hundreds of lobbyists get disclosed, and some of those things might be on the bottom of his stack of things to do. One thing I wanted to mention about the form is categories. The issue box requires you identify a category. And this is not part of the disclosure. This is an indexing tool for benefit of users of the data. And it really is not, it doesn't supplement your issue disclosure. And what we're seeing people do is say, put the same issue in under 7 different categories. And all we need is the category that closest fits it. It either is agriculture or environmental. You don't have to put the same issue on both. just use one category, the one that you think is closest. The users of the data can resort it and reorganize it any way they use it. If you use it well and you see an issue categorized the way House staff does, you'll probably end up seeing a one-to-one correlation between your disclosures and the bills that pass the House and Senate this year when our House summary comes out. So that's a tool that people can use for indexing, but it does not constitute disclosure. A question that's come up frequently is what happens when the amendment's filed in the committee meeting and I want to address the amendment and I didn't know it was coming. We are revising the House committee appearance record in such a way so that written record that you hand in before you speak in a committee meeting will allow you to disclose what you need to disclose under this rule for purposes of that meeting. So you won't have to step outside, get on your phone, log in the issue, and then walk back in and try to address the committee. You'll be able to do that disclosure for that day on the committee appearance form. We do think you need to, after the committee meeting, if there's a new issue in play that you're going to continue lobbying on, that you would add another disclosure on that issue. However, if it's an amendment that fails, there's nothing left there to lobby and you're done. If the amendment passes, it becomes part of the bill. If you're already disclosed on the bill, you don't really have to add anything to your disclosure. So please understand that you'll be taken care of in committee, but that doesn't count if you want to have a sidebar with a member, ask them outside in the hall to talk about the amendment. You ought to disclose before you have that kind of conversation. But the meeting speeches themselves will be covered in the committee appearance record that you've always filled out at committee meetings.
All right. I see another question here that's a good question. When entering issues, are you required to state a position? And the answer is no. You do not have to state your disposition or whether or not you oppose or support a particular issue. You're simply disclosing the issue you are working on or bill that you are working on. You also, along with that, don't have to, as Don mentioned at the beginning, it's not per meeting, this requirement. You simply, it covers you for that legislative year or so. You don't have to put who you're meeting with or when or any of that. It's simply just the issue or bill that you are lobbying on. After you have disclosed an issue and bills are filed, and you want to speak to a member on a specific bill pertaining to the disclosed issue, do you need to register the particular bill number? The answer is yes. So if you have issues or legislative proposals that have been turned into bills, you are required to go back in and register for the specific bill number once that is filed.
That'll be the easiest thing on the whole system.
And entering a bill is very easy. All you have to do is go into the form. Down in the bill section, you just type in the number. You don't have to worry about HB or SB or CS, whatever. Simply just put the numerical number and click after you notify the particular client that is supposed to be associated with that bill or clients. You just type in the numerical number, hit add, and the system will add all the appropriate HB or HJR or SB or anything else that is associated with that bill, and that will cover you. What is that?
We have a question from the audience, from the live audience.
The live audience.
What do you do when a member pulls you out in the hall during a committee meeting to ask if you want an amendment filed for your client? In the first place, you don't have to, you have no more duty to respond to that under this rule than you ever did, but if you want to respond to it, it's probably appropriate, especially in these early months of this new rule, to remind the member that you've not yet disclosed that issue, so before you can talk to them about it, you need to take a minute and do your disclosure on your phone, or come up to Jason's office and let him help you do it on a house computer, one of the kiosk computers in the building. But this is where the courtesy between members and lobbyists, I think, is going to be critical. And I would consider that an incourteous invitation by a member. I would suggest that both members and lobbyists ought to have those conversations, other than in the middle of a committee meeting on an amendment in that meeting. I know it happens, but if it's a surprise issue to you, you just need to respond. I wasn't thinking we'd be discussing that issue today. Give me a minute, let me disclose, and then we can talk about this. So the members are being trained, and they should be alert that you have that need and that they shouldn't be pressing you on a matter that you've not disclosed.
Yeah. Something that I'll add to that, and Don can correct me if I'm wrong, if the particular amendment in question isn't adding an issue to a bill that you've already disclosed for, if it's simply tweaking something that's already in the bill and would not be adding something to the bill, then I think that they would be okay. Then you would not have to disclose anything additional if it's for a bill that you've already disclosed on, and all you're doing is modifying some of the language that is within that legislation currently. So there's that. Let's see, another question here. Okay, let me read this. As you key your issue description and put a check mark by the client, do you remove the check mark as you go to the next issue description? All of my issue descriptions show for one client side. And that leads to something that I mentioned before. When you click the client and you go down to the issue and click add, you're not adding that issue to that client yet. You're simply adding it to the form that you will then submit into the database. So if you're adding some issues for one particular client and they only apply to that client, after you add the issues, you need to click the submit button for them to be transmitted to the system. And then you can use a second form to submit something for another client if it's a different issue. If both clients or multiple clients care about that same issue, you could check multiple clients and put that issue in at once. It's really up to you how is best for you to enter your stuff in for your particular client. So that, if you're having problems with that, please give me a call, but it is important to note when you click that add button, you're not adding the issue to your client yet. You have to add the issue to the form and then submit the form for it to go into the database. So that's probably what happened in that situation. Okay, can you help us understand the importance of the issue category? Don just talked about that. The issue category is something that you select that you think best describes the issue that you're putting in. So as Don mentioned, there's no need to, if you have a topic or an issue that you think might apply to two different issue categories, you don't need to disclose it twice or multiple times. Just pick the one that best that you think best fits the issue that you're working on, and that will be fine.
Let me say something.
Yeah.
You only have to choose a category when you're typing in text in an issue box. Everybody already categorizes bills however they want, and so you don't need to select a category when you identify a bill. You just add the bill and hit submit. But with respect to the issues, we're trying to categorize the issues so that everybody doesn't have to go through a bunch of random text to try to look for the words agriculture or water or whatever. By selecting a category, it allows users to pull up groups of information and find who's interested in these policy areas without having to search every text box for keywords.
Okay. Do I need to disclose on a bill if I'm only going to, quote, waive and support and do not have any other meetings about the bill? The answer would be yes, because if you're waiving in support, you're lobbying in favor of that particular legislation, even if you're just waiving in support. So before you do that, you would have to disclose. But as Don mentioned before, if it's a bill that you had not previously disclosed on, and you're in a committee meeting and it comes up and you feel like you want to waive in support, that committee appearance record will cover you for that meeting if you want to do that. And if you don't plan on doing any other lobbying for that bill, then you wouldn't have to do any further disclosures. However, if you decide later that you want to have another meeting or something about that, you do have to disclose. So if you do waive in support of a particular bill, you're lobbying on that bill, it's probably best to file a disclosure either before the meeting or after if something like that.
Let me offer a lighthearted response to that. I think one thing that'll help people think, what should I disclose, is what am I telling my clients I'm working on? And if you want to tell your client that you worked on that bill and all you did was stand up and support, it's probably a good idea to disclose that bill, and then there's actually go lobby on them. But any statement in a committee meeting on legislation is lobbying, so you shouldn't be talking at a committee meeting or to a member or to a staff about a bill, about a proposal, about an amendment, about a specific appropriation, unless you have disclosed that issue, bill, or appropriation.
All right. Another question here. So to be clear, if an amendment comes up that you didn't expect, if it fails, you don't have to register, but if it does, you do have to file. Well, if you've already disclosed that you're lobbying on that bill, and it's not an amendment that you asked to offer, your disclosure is covered for all amendments to that bill. If you're lobbying on the bill, we assume that you care about all the amendments that are attached to that. The exception to that is if you are asking for a specific amendment that adds an issue to the bill, or really if you're asking for a specific amendment to be added to that bill, you probably should disclose the amendment. So if an unexpected amendment comes up, whether it fails or passes, if you've already disclosed on the bill, then you're covered. If it's an amendment that is on a bill that you haven't already disclosed for, and you fill out your committee appearance form, you talk about it, and it fails, then there would be no other need to file on it. If it passes and it's something you continue to care about, then you'd have to disclose for that particular amendment. But I think Don wants to add something.
Yeah, I just want to add one technical thing, and that is the amendments that are handwritten in committee that don't have a barcode number that's on the internet before the meeting convenes. The fact that you know somebody else is filing the amendment, if you are going to talk to anybody about the amendment before it's filed, you're not disclosed on it until you do a disclosure. Once it's filed, it's a part of your bill disclosure, and you can talk about any amendment that's filed. But those handwritten amendments, as a matter of technicality, sometimes they're not technically filed until the meeting convenes and the member says, Mr. Speaker, I've got a handwritten, or Mr. Chairman, I've got a handwritten amendment I'd like for you to take up at the appropriate time. So filing is a little less clear when we're dealing with handwritten amendments in the committee. The ones with barcodes, once they're up on the system, they're part of the bill disclosure, and you don't have to disclose. It's the ones you ask for primarily that you have to disclose before they're filed.
And I'll further elaborate on amendments real quick, just because we've had another question come in about floor amendments and handwritten amendments. And the answer to that is if bills have if amendments have an amendment number associated with them, you can just disclose that number. But sometimes they don't. And in those situations, you can put a description of that amendment. Maybe let us know what bill, and then kind of a description of the amendment you're working on if there's nothing available at that particular time. That's why the amendment enter section looks a little different than the bill or issue section, is because the amendments can sometimes be available in different forms. But if you're disclosing the amendment and there is a barcode number associated with that amendment, just disclosing that is fine. If it's not, some sort of other description of that amendment would suffice.
Audience question.
Oh, another audience question here. I'll let Don tackle that.
Another audience question. I'm going to answer it 3 different ways because it can be taken 3 different ways. The question is, can I disclose a category that covers everything I think may come up? In the first place, I want to use the word category technically because it's already a label on our form, and categories are general indexing topics, and they do not contain any specific disclosure. So a category title itself doesn't constitute a disclosure. Now, if I say, can I file a disclosure that covers everything I think may come up, if you provide it with sufficient specificity and the way you think it may come up, yes, our issue boxes, how many, it's bigger than a tweet, but how many characters can you put in?
250.
250 characters in a box, so you may have to click add a few times to put everything you want. If you want to have an issue of safety, a category of safety, and you begin filling issue boxes with everything that you think may come up with the kind of specificity that you talk to a member of staff about, you can add all that information. You get to 250 characters, hit add, start filling another box. You can add it all today, tonight, before Tuesday's training, before the first day of session, anytime you want. You can put in and put as much information as you want, hit submit, and hopefully you're done. If you got good enough relations with members, they're not going to ever go outside your issue disclosure. But we all know members, and they're going to be thinking on their own too. So when they start talking about issues that you didn't think of in advance, if you want to engage, you need to go ahead and add that issue to your disclosure. Is that clear?
Okay. I have a question here. How does that affect similar bills? Do you have to enter all the similar bills to the main bill? We do have a section on the form, if you've seen it, where after you enter your bill, you can add a companion bill. The reason why we have that there is because a lot of times lobbyists will be shopping a bill in both chambers at the same time. Just how our process works, people often do that. So whatever the companion bill is to the bill that you have shopped, so it's whatever you think your companion is, or whatever the companion bill is to that bill, not necessarily how it's flagged in our system or on our website. And if that changes, you don't have to worry about that. It's going to whatever companion bill that you think is the companion to the bill that that you're lobbying on. Yeah, and here's Don again.
I've worked with similar and identical bills a little more than Jason over the last 20 years, and I think the simple answer to your question is, yeah, you should disclose all the bill numbers that you're actively engaged with. The fact that they're similar, we all know a bill can get tangled up and the other member's bill move forward, and one bill starts out similar to one bill, ends up similar to a totally different bill. If we're talking about House and Senate companions, the pairings usually stay together, and you can disclose that in the companion box, as Jason said. But two House bills that are on the same subject are also shown as similar. You can have multiple bills that are similar. If you're going to lobby on all of them, you need to disclose all of them. Let me say one other thing about disclosing on a bill number. Where we have a broad bill, if we have the transportation package and it's got 72 sections in it, and it's all dispersed issues from driver's licenses to red light cameras to you know, naming roads after Speaker Corcoran or whatever all those issues are, putting a bill number in is not really a disclosure of sufficient specificity. If you got a couple issues in that bill that you're lobbying on, list those issues in an issue box as well as disclosing the bill number. And we're telling everybody that General Appropriation Act or House Bill 5001 is not a disclosure with sufficient specificity to allow people to know what you're lobbying on. So if it's too general for your discussion with your member, it's probably too general for your issue disclosure. Nobody goes in and lobbies a member about general health issues. So don't even disclose that. It's not sufficient specificity. Whatever the issue is, hospital rates, research money, health insurance mandate on autism, whatever the specific issue is, disclose that and just stay away from general phrases that will not provide any information to anyone who reads it. Don't do it. It's not a disclosure. It's a waste of your time, and it's a waste of our ones and zeros in our sweet little database.
All right. And that is an important note. And something else I'll add to that, if a bill becomes too broad, like if it becomes a train later in the system and you didn't realize that or something, we do have the ability to contact the lobbyist via email to let them know that a bill has become a little bit too broad. Can you be a little bit more specific regarding your issues to that bill? So that's something that we'll be there to help you out with. Something I've seen a couple times pop up, there won't be an app for this, but the form and the new House website is a little bit more mobile friendly than it was before, and the form is very mobile friendly. So you can access the form from an iPad, from iPhone, Galaxy phone, any other type of phone. It should work there. And if you're having issues with that, please let me know, and I can talk to our IT folks and try to get that worked out. I talked about that. Something else, our interns considered staff, which must disclose ahead of time. Again, we didn't change the definition of lobbyists, so if they were not lobbyists before, they don't have to be now for the vast majority of cases. But if you have a question about that, you can always contact our office. We can talk it out with you. But if you have a question about whether or not someone should be a lobbyist or not, you can always contact the office.
Either one, just put the bill number in. The companion bill box is next to it. And this is a very good question. It's a technical question that we haven't thought about yet because we haven't started session. But how do you add a companion bill days after the disclosure of the main bill? Obviously, that happens during the filing period, particularly where the Senate bill might be filed, well, like the Senate claim bills were all filed before August. I don't know how senators who weren't elected file bills, but they were, and the House claim bills won't be filed until this winter. Yeah, one bill is disclosed and the companion shows up. I don't know that there's any problem with, I would go in right now and resubmit the House bill with the companion bill in the box, or vice versa, resubmit the Senate bill with the now known House companion bill number. Or another thing to do would be just go in and do a disclosure on the companion bill itself and not worry about tying them together. We're hoping to use your companion pairings to help us. Obviously, we all have trouble sometimes identifying a companion in the middle of the mess of week 5, 6, and 7. We have our own ways that we try to disclose, but we're always trying to gather information. And if you know that you're trying to get those bills paired up, you might fail. But if you know you're trying to do that, it would be helpful to everybody in the process that you disclose that companion. But you can add any bill anytime. So simple things, just go add the companion bill as a new disclosure, or redisclose the House bill, the original bill with the companion bill in the box. Either way will work.
Yes, I'll second what Don said on that. Something else real quick. Will the database automatically update our client lists? The answer is yes. We're getting data on a daily basis from the Office of Lobbyist Registration. We're using their usernames and passwords, and all the information comes directly from them. So when you register a new client, there's sometimes there's a delay of about 24, or sometimes I've heard maybe even up to 2 days before we'll get the updated information. So in January, when you all re-register, all of your client lists will update with whatever you will newly have registered for. However, just be warned, it will take about a day for those clients to show up on our side. But if you're having an issue with that and you need to have a meeting about something that you haven't already disclosed in the system, we have the PDF form available that can cover you until the electronic form catches up in the data. So all of that will update.
And that PDF is on the form site?
Yes. It's available on the main site. If you click on the troubleshooting login link, that'll bring you to the PDF form, and after you get into the form itself, there's a link at the top of the form for the PDF form, if you need it. Okay, so what about budget amendments? You could disclose those just like you would any other amendment in the amendment section. Now, under the new appropriations rule, all appropriations projects have to have their own bill number, so you can disclose them with the bill number. But if there's an amendment, you can disclose that in the amendment section, which will let you type a description or line number, however you want to disclose that, as long as it's clear. No, when you re-register in January, all the disclosures you're doing now in November and December, we're applying those to the 2017 legislative year. So anything you do now will be applied for the next session. You won't have to re-register all of these submissions like you do have to re-register for all your clients. So we're giving you that ability to kind of do a little bit early. That actually goes same for the contract disclosure section of this. You can send us contracts now. You don't have to wait until January. We'll be happy to take them now as long as the term of the contract goes throughout 2017.
Through the session.
Through the session, I'm sorry. Then you're more than welcome to file those contracts now. You don't have to wait. And that's all the questions I have in there. Do we have another audience?
Another audience question, and this is similar to the question about the member calls you aside right before the committee meeting or out in the hall during the committee meeting. And this is if a member calls you on the phone to ask about a bill that hasn't been filed, how can you disclose in advance? Well, obviously you can't disclose in advance of that phone call. The problem is if you refuse to talk to them, they won't be happy. I think that the challenge for the members is to recognize that the rule that they adopted puts that burden on that conversation, and they ought to show you more courtesy than to be rude in that context. You can ask them to call back, and if you can call them back in a moment and get online and do your disclosure, or you can tell them that you haven't disclosed on that issue and you'd rather not talk about it today, and to please check back with you at a later time. But if a member is behaving in a rude or obnoxious way about this burden that the House members have placed on you all, I would strongly encourage you to let us know, let Chairman Metz know. We're trying to help the members recognize what this burden is and to teach them to operate within the context. I think you're going to have a number of members, you may have already experienced that, when you call and ask for an appointment with them, that they're going to ask, what's the meeting about? And their aide is probably going to look up the disclosure and see if you've disclosed it. And if you haven't, they'll probably contact you and say, you need to disclose your issue before we have this meeting. So some of them are being proactive and trying to help you and remind you to do your disclosures before they meet. But obviously others will be impetuous, and they want to know your opinion right now. And it's just like a policeman asking you to sell them a marijuana cigarette. You know, you made a rule that says I can't do this, and you're asking me to do it. So let's all be professional about this. We're very pleased with the way the lobbying corps has responded so far. We know these are going to be some minor difficulties occasionally in some conversations, but we are trying hard to teach the members and encourage the members to be patient and courteous with you and help you have the ability to comply with the rule that they've imposed on you. I would never feel bad about it. And if, again, if a member is misbehaving, you can talk to Chairman Oliva or talk to Chairman Metz, and the leadership can address the member problem or talk to the majority or minority leader about a particular member. We all know with term limits that we're all always teaching. And so that's part of the game.
I'll add real quick to that, if you've done your issue disclosures, it's possible that that issue might be covered by something you've already disclosed, and then, you know, maybe after that conversation you can put in the more specific proposal when you have that, especially as we're all learning the system. But I'll also second what Don said, that if a member is putting you into that position, this is a burden that they, having passed the rule, placed on you. So if you need, let us know, let us on the committee know, let Chair Metz know, and we'll be happy to help out with that. Are House interns applicable to the disclosure rules? Well, they are employees of the House, so if you're having conversation with House interns and you're lobbying them, then you would have to disclose before that. And real quick, if you want to, we're kind of nearing the end of our hour here, so if you have any final questions, please submit those, and we'll try to get to them before we leave.
I'd like to address a couple
of
separate issues.
Of course. We have a question here. When you disclose a contract for a public entity, then obviously you'll be showing the exact fee agreement versus the fee range that has been required in the past on quarterly lobbying disclosure form. We still need to file quarterly lobbying disclosure by range. Is that correct? And yes. So the public disclosure, the public entity disclosure, that is a House rule that you have to give to the House. That does not supplement the other requirements that put on you for quarterly reporting or anything else with the Office of Lobbyist Registration. That is still a requirement. So I'm going to let Don's going to address a couple of other issues while we're waiting for kind of some of these last-minute questions to come in. And if we see any of those come in, then we'll answer those questions. If not, we'll be done. So here you go, Don.
I'd be remiss if I didn't also remind all of you that there are other new rules governing your conduct and your behavior in the House. One of them you've probably heard about: no electronic communications with members when they're in a meeting or when the House is in session. The old classic method of sending a page in with a message asking you to come out and talk is the way that it's supposed to be done. Just like you can't hold up a sign in the gallery, you can't send them a text or an email during the session that constitutes lobbying. We also have, the House added some conduct behavior standards, and which includes the same sexual harassment and discrimination standard on lobbyists that exists on House members. So lobbyists are expected to behave professionally. You already have, for many years, been operating under rules that require that you give honest and truthful answers and make honest and truthful testimony. So I would strongly encourage you to review House Rule 17.1, look for the new things that are in there, ask questions if there's something you don't understand. But please review the rules and the expectations of your conduct. The House, the position of the House is that the House has the same right as any court to command professional behavior out of the paid advocates that appear in their institution. And that's the philosophy behind most of these rules. Even the issue disclosure rule: you can't participate in litigation without telling the judge who you're representing and what their interests are. And this is exactly analogous to that. So please understand.
Take phone calls and emails from any of you if you have any further questions. We do have those trainings next week, December 13th and 14th from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. You're more than welcome to attend, and as Don said, I believe that they are going to be live streamed by the Florida channel. I believe we'll have a link on our website as well. The current room location for that is 404 House Office Building. Because we've received such a large response for that, we may actually be changing our committee room on that, but if we do that, you will receive a reminder email with a new location. But for now,
no projects.
So we'll be, and in that training, we'll be talking about the appropriations project, the member projects new requirement. That'll be covered at the beginning of the meeting, and then Don and probably myself will get into some of the lobbyist disclosure information and the public contract disclosure and any of the other things that anyone has questions about. And I believe that we'll wrap it up, and I'll hand this back to Amanda.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We were certainly excited to be able to bring this opportunity to you. Thank you to Jason and Don again for being here and allowing this kind of Q&A time exclusively for our members and for our lobbyists. It's a huge benefit to have you here, and we're greatly appreciative for it. So on behalf of myself and the board and all of our members, thank you very much for being here. An audio recording of today's webinar is going to be made available tomorrow in the FAPL Friday newsletter, so please keep your eyes open for that. If you have any questions in the meantime before that recording is available, please feel free to contact me directly, amanda@fapl.us, or you can always reach our office at 850-402-2954. We look forward to seeing you next week in Tallahassee, whether you attend the training with the House on the 13th or the 14th. Everyone is invited to the FAPL Teeny Tuesday evening, December 13th at Florida Realtors as well. So we look forward to seeing everyone there discussing these issues and concerns and questions in person, and have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for joining us.